Again, thank you for inviting me to speak at this conference. Yesterday was very enjoyable for me and very informative, so it's a pleasure to be here. This is about convergence of training of lawyers in civil and post-Soviet countries. And again, I'm here as a representative, neither of those really, but of common law jurisdictions, basically. That may be the bad news. The good news is I think that the training methodology worldwide for professionals, including lawyers and judges, who I have more experience now with training judges than lawyers actually, is converging. I'm going to give you just a quick overview of where this is going in Canada, and then in terms of methodology, and then a quick overview of the steps that one takes in Canada to move from being an ordinary citizen to being a lawyer and being a judge. The trend today in professional training is on practical skills-based training. And this is being done more and more in law schools in Canada, but with professional organizations, with licensed lawyers, and also with judicial education bodies such as the one that I work for. And there are, I think, two essential features of this kind of education. The first one is that it is intensely practical education. It is about what professionals need to be able to do, what lawyers, for instance, need to be able to do when they go into a courtroom if they're litigators, what judges need to be able to do as judges, as part of the judging task. They need to be able to decide cases, they need to be able to write decisions that people can understand, they need to be able to control, especially trial judges, difficult situations that arise in a courtroom. So the focus of this education is intensely practical and derived from real needs of real professionals doing real work. And it's something different than the kind of academic A to Z approach to training that is done other places. And this is neither of these methodologies are better, they're just used in different circumstances. And in Canada, there's this increasing trend to, with professionals, use this kind of very practical skills-based education. The second feature of this is that the people being trained are adults, and nobody in this room will be surprised to hear me or anyone else talk about adult education and the principles there. Adults learn differently than do younger people. And the reason for that, of course, is that I, and I think everyone else in this room, have experience in life. And even the newest lawyers and newest judges have experience in life. And naturally, what we do when we're confronted with an issue, or in fact presented an educational phenomenon, something that's to be taught, is we take that thing and compare it against our life experience. So, and if it, as we say in English, there's an expression, if it passes the smell test, then as professionals, we say, well, maybe this is something that I need to know about. So it's, in doing this kind of education, it's very important to connect with the interest of the learner. And I'm not going to describe the methodology in great detail, but it goes a bit like this. You connect the learner to their experience on a topic, and I can speak more easily about judicial education, but I know this is done with legal education in the professional context in Canada. In doing an educational program, we might get a judge to tell a story at the beginning of a course that will connect with everybody in the room. And a simple example of that is we're teaching courtroom management to trial judges. You know, trial judges all over the world are familiar with the situation of their courtrooms going out of control because there's angry people in there, people with emotions, and how do you control that? How do you deal with that kind of a situation? Well, that's an experience that usually resonates with everybody in the room. So immediately you start with that, you've captured people's interest, and that's the first step in this kind of education. And you give them some knowledge about, well, how might you handle that? That could be a lecture in how you deal with it. And then you give them a chance to actually hands-on practice the skill. You give problems, and the last speaker referred to this, you know, case studies, things where the learner actually has to work on the problem, because that is what makes this kind of education work. That's the real motor, and you give them feedback on it. And there's been studies done about this kind of education, and one of the features of it is that it's highly retainable by the learner. If I just give a lecture without any accompanying material, like this actually, studies show, and these studies have been replicated all over the world, that people who are listening to that lecture can generally be expected to retain about 5% of what's being taught. Using these kinds of hands-on methods, that retention level goes up to somewhere around 75%. So if we're teaching professionals, lawyers, judges, it just makes great sense that we use methods that help the learner retain the knowledge that's being learned and therefore be able to apply it in their professional life. So that's the general approach. But you know, what's happening in Canada? And I'm on. You have my presentation. I'm on page 3 of the presentation now. Canada is a bijural system, as I said yesterday. We have both civil and common law in the country. Canada is a federation. There's one federal power and 10 provincial powers, and that means for lawyers, for instance, that there's a self-governing body in each province that licenses lawyers to practice. And judges in Canada are appointed from a cadre of lawyers, and generally their jurisdiction runs only to the border of the province in Canada, and that's how it works for a federation, unlike Ukraine. But that has some implications for how the education is done in different provinces. Going to slide number 5, I've given you some numbers just so you can compare between Ukraine and Canada. We have a population of 35 million. We have about 100,000 lawyers in Canada and about 2,200 judges in Canada. So that gives you some sense of the size of the entities that we're dealing with. Slide 6. This is an overview. To go through the process in Canada, speaking in educational terms, first you must get a first university degree, usually in arts and science, and then take a second degree. The second degree is a law school degree. To get admitted to the bar, there's more education required. I'll talk about that in a minute. And to be selected as a judge, the PowerPoint you have says no educational requirement before selection. That was when I wrote the PowerPoint a week ago. In the meantime, Canada has, after 200 years, adopted one requirement for training for education before one can apply to become a judge. Next slide. Quickly, universities, university law schools are accredited by law societies, by the professional bodies that license lawyers in Canada, and you must go to an accredited university if you hope to practice law, because those are the only studies that are recognized by the professional organizations. It's a 3-year course, and there's no time here to get into this, but there's been a shift over the years, and I know there are some in this room who may know more about Canadian academic education than I do, but there's much more use of distance learning methodologies and much more emphasis on practical training in universities than there was when I went many years ago to law school in Canada. There's many more. There's the moot argument process, you know, where students argue cases before a panel of judges to practice. This is taken off, you know, and this is very practical in Canada. There's much more of it now than there used to be. It's very practical method. Next slide. Lawyers are licensed on a provincial basis. In each province has a law society that licenses. I'm using the one in Ontario as an example, although they're all pretty much similar. You must pass 2 licensing exams. One as a barrister, exam. The other one is a solicitor exam. They're each 7 hours long, and all people called to the bar, who become lawyers in Canada, are both barristers and solicitors. They may choose to practice in one area or the other, but they're licensed to practice either way. There is experiential training that's required to be called to the bar, and this again is this is the very practical part. It used to be when I went to law school, or went to take the bar admission process, that articling, that is clerking with a practicing lawyer for 10 months or a year was the only way to do it, and you were attached to the lawyer. I worked with a criminal defense lawyer, so I argued bail cases and helped my senior lawyer prepare for big trials, and did that kind of work, but all very practical. It's been found in Canada that there are not enough lawyers to go around for the number of law graduates that we're churning out of our law schools, and that raises another problem that there's no time to get into here. So Ontario's adopted a law practice program where you go for intense practical education at a higher education institute, and it's the kind of education that I talked about at the very beginning, you know, that kind of hands-on, experiential education, dealing with real problems that might arise for you as you're a lawyer, and then a work placement with a practicing lawyer, which is the kind of thing I described already. And you must be of good character. Few people are rejected for not being a good character. You pretty much have to have been convicted of a crime of dishonesty, like fraud, before the law society is going to reject you. There's continuing professional development requirements for lawyers in Canada. In Ontario, it amounts to 12 hours per year of continuing professional development, 3 hours on professionalism topics like ethics, practice management, and 9 hours on substantive issues like criminal procedure or settlement techniques. Judges in Canada, 2,200, as I said. They're appointed from the ranks of lawyers, and you have to have at least 10 years experience, but usually it's 20 years before you're appointed. There is a selection process where by you're interviewed. There are no tests, but interviews may actually disclose issues with concerning skills or knowledge of candidates, and that's a factor in whether or not they'll be appointed. For the first time in Canada, the last couple of weeks, there has been introduced a requirement that anyone who applies to be a judge complete a course in sexual assault training. This is a result of a very, I'm hesitant to say it in an international forum, but it's been all over the news in Canada. We had a very awful case, which is just finished, in which it was a sexual assault case, in which the judge involved continually called the victim during the trial the accused. He kept referring to her as the accused. And at some point in the trial, he said to this, it was a rape case. He said, "Why didn't you just keep your knees together and avoid being raped?" And well, there was great public outrage at this. There was great consternation amongst lawyers, judges, and the government. And the result of all that has been a requirement that anybody who applies to be a judge in Canada now has to take this training. Judicial education in Canada is the National Judicial Institute, which I work at, delivers most of the judicial education. It's voluntary in Canada for judges, judicial education, except for a 2-week course for newly appointed judges, which is mandatory. And the Canadian Judicial Council supports about 10 days per year of education for all judges. And then we use the kind of methods that I talked about when I started my talk here. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. That's a brief overview